Your body is actively working against you right now, not because something is broken, not because your metabolism is slow, but because it is doing exactly what it was designed to do, and the environment you live in is sending it the wrong instructions. You have tried eating less. You have tried moving more. You have tried cutting carbs, cutting fat, counting calories, intermittent fasting, and at some point, probably more than once, you looked at the math and thought, this should be working, and it wasn't. The reason has nothing to do with willpower. It has nothing to do with discipline. It has to do with 4 hormonal signals that are operating beneath your conscious control, and that no calorie deficit in the world can override when they are working against you. This is the biology of weight, not the version you have been told, the actual version. And the 4th signal, the one almost nobody talks about, is the one that explains why some people do everything right and still cannot lose weight. We get to that in 8 minutes. The calorie model of weight says this: eat less than you burn and you will lose weight. Eat more and you will gain. It is a simple equation and it is not wrong, but it is so incomplete that following it without understanding what sits beneath it almost always fails. Here is what the calorie model does not account for. Your body does not process a calorie from sugar the same way it processes a calorie from protein. The food you eat triggers hormonal responses, and those hormonal responses determine whether the energy from that food gets burned, stored as muscle, or stored as fat. The calorie is the input. The hormone is the decision maker. There are 4 hormonal signals that control this decision-making process, 4 molecules that your body is producing right now in response to everything you have eaten, how you have slept, how much stress you are under, and how much you have moved in the last 48 hours. When these 4 signals are aligned, your body releases fat efficiently, maintains muscle, and regulates appetite automatically. When they are disrupted by diet choices, by sleep deprivation, by chronic stress, by inactivity, your body holds on to fat, breaks down muscle, and generates hunger signals that no amount of willpower can silence. Let us go through them, one by one. And the 3rd one is going to reframe everything you think you know about hunger. Signal 1, insulin. Insulin is produced by your pancreas every time carbohydrates or protein enter your bloodstream as glucose. Its job is to move that glucose into cells, muscle cells, liver cells, fat cells, for energy or storage. Without insulin, glucose cannot enter most cells. You need it. But here's the problem. When insulin is chronically elevated, which happens when blood glucose is chronically elevated from frequent eating, high sugar diets, or high stress lifestyles, fat cells cannot release their stored energy. Insulin is a storage signal. When it is present, fat stays locked inside fat cells. The body cannot access it for fuel, no matter how little you eat. This is why someone can be in a caloric deficit and not lose fat. If their insulin remains elevated throughout the day, their fat cells are essentially locked. The key is not just eating less. It is creating periods where insulin drops low enough and stays low long enough for fat cells to open. What lowers insulin? Longer gaps between meals, reducing refined carbohydrates and added sugars, adequate sleep and physical movement, specifically the kind of low-intensity sustained movement we covered in previous episodes. Signal 2 is the one that explains why you feel hungry even when you know you should not be. And it is being disrupted by something most people do every single day. Signal 2, leptin and ghrelin. Leptin is produced by your fat cells. Its job is to tell your brain you have enough stored energy, you do not need to eat. In theory, the more body fat you carry, the more leptin you produce, the less hungry you feel. In theory, the problem is Leptin resistance. When Leptin is chronically elevated, which happens in people who carry excess body fat, the brain stops hearing the signal. The receptors in the hypothalamus that respond to Leptin become desensitized. Your fat cells are screaming that they are full, and your brain cannot hear it. You feel hungry even when your body has more than enough stored energy to fuel you for days. Ghrelin works in the opposite direction. It is produced primarily in the stomach, and it signals hunger. Ghrelin rises before meals and drops after eating. But, and this is critical, ghrelin is also elevated by sleep deprivation. A single night of poor sleep increases ghrelin levels by up to 28%, according to peer-reviewed research. One night, 28% more hunger signal, with no corresponding increase in energy needs. This is why people who sleep poorly eat more the following day, not because of lack of discipline, but because their ghrelin is chemically elevated. The hunger is biologically real. It is not imagined. What restores Leptin sensitivity and normalizes ghrelin, consistent sleep, reducing chronic inflammation through diet, and eliminating added sugar, which directly impairs Leptin receptor sensitivity. Signal 3 is the one that makes stress fattening. Not metaphorically, biochemically, and it connects directly to everything we covered in episode 3. Signal 3, cortisol. When you are under chronic stress, and in 2026, chronic stress is the default state for most working adults, your adrenal glands produce cortisol continuously. We covered the cortisol timing problem in episode 3, but here is what we did not cover: what cortisol does to fat storage specifically. Cortisol has a direct relationship with a fat-storing enzyme called LYPOPROTEINLYPASE, particularly in visceral fat tissue, the fat that accumulates around the abdomen and organs. Cortisol upregulates LLYPO-protein LYPAS in visceral fat. It tells those cells to absorb more fat from the bloodstream and store it. The more chronic stress, the more cortisol, the more visceral fat accumulation, regardless of calorie intake. There is a second mechanism. Cortisol triggers cravings specifically for high-sugar, high-fat foods, the combination that provides the fastest energy for a perceived threat. When stress is chronic, but the threat is psychological rather than physical, the body still generates these cravings. You eat. The energy does not get used. The cortisol drives it into storage. This is the biological reason why stress makes people gain weight even when they are not eating significantly more. The hormone is redirecting existing energy into fat storage while simultaneously generating cravings for more. What lowers the cortisol-fat connection? Everything from episode 3, morning light exposure, last caffeine before noon, dinner before 7 p.m., but also reducing the work and sleep patterns driving the cortisol elevation in the first place. And the fourth signal is the one that explains why exercise alone almost never produces the fat loss results people expect, and why the type of movement matters far more than the duration. Signal 4, IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor. 1. When you restrict calories significantly, your body faces a choice: preserve muscle or preserve fat. In a healthy hormonal environment with adequate protein and resistant stimulus, it preserves muscle and burns fat. In a disrupted hormonal environment, elevated cortisol, poor sleep, Leptin resistance, it does the opposite. It breaks down muscle for energy and preserves fat as a survival reserve. IGF-1 is the primary anabolic signal that protects muscle during a caloric deficit. It is produced in the liver in response to growth hormone, adequate protein intake, and physical stimulus. When IGF-1 is low, which happens with chronic sleep deprivation, very low protein intake, and sedentary behavior, muscle breaks down and fat is preserved. This is why people who diet without addressing their sleep and without adequate protein consistently lose muscle alongside fat, and why their metabolism slows. They are not burning the right fuel, they are dismantling the engine. What maintains IGF-1 and muscle during fat loss, adequate protein at every meal, resistance-based movement, sleep, specifically the deep, slow-wave sleep where growth hormone is released, and keeping cortisol low enough that the body does not prioritize muscle breakdown for energy. Here is what weight loss actually is. It is not a calorie problem, it is a signaling problem. Your body knows how to burn fat. It has been doing it efficiently for 200,000 years of human evolution. What it cannot do is burn fat when insulin is keeping fat cells locked, when leptin resistance is telling the brain it is starving, when cortisol is directing every available calorie into visceral storage, when IGF-1 is too low to protect the muscle that drives your metabolism. Fix the signals, and the body does what it was always designed to do. 4 things, in the order that matters most. First, sleep. Everything else on this list is significantly less effective without adequate sleep. Ghrelin cannot normalize. Growth hormone cannot release. Leptin receptors cannot recover sensitivity. Cortisol cannot complete its natural decline. Sleep is not one variable among many. It is the foundation on which all the others rest. Second, insulin management. Not calorie restriction, insulin management. Longer gaps between meals, fewer refined carbohydrates, less added sugar. These 3 changes lower insulin more reliably than any calorie deficit and allow fat cells to open between meals. Third, cortisol reduction, specifically the evening cortisol that episode 3 covered, the dinner timing, the screen timing, the light timing. These are not lifestyle preferences. They are the direct inputs that determine how much visceral fat your body accumulates overnight. Fourth, protein and movement, not cardio for hours. Adequate protein at every meal, which most people significantly underestimate, and resistance stimulus that sends the IGF-1 signal to preserve muscle during fat loss. The combination that tells the body to burn fat, not dismantle muscle. None of this requires counting. None of it requires willpower. All of it requires understanding, which is what this episode was about. Your body is not working against you. It is working with the instructions it has been given. Change the instructions, and the biology follows. If you want to understand specifically how sugar has been disrupting your insulin and leptin signals for years, and what happens to both within the first 30 days of removing it, that is exactly what episode 1 of Body Signals covers. Watch it next. Subscribe to Body Signals. Every week, one mechanism, explained the way it actually works.